Welcome to this free immigration help channel. Today is September 7, 2023, and I wanted to make a very quick news update from USCIS and the Department of State as pertaining to the US visas. I haven't been making videos on this channel for quite some time now. I wanted to apologize for that. So let's do a brief overview of what have been coming out new from Department of State first, before we get to USCIS, because there's actually some good news for USCIS. Unfortunately, not so good news from the Department of State, so let's start with that. Let's get that out of the way, and then we will move on further to USCIS with some decent news. Okay, so the very first thing that not very good from the Department of State, as came out from September 6, 2023, so just yesterday is an update on diversity visa, the DV program for 2023, and looks like they are reaching their limits quite early this fiscal year. As most of you already know, if you have applied for a DV, which is a green card lottery, basically, that's what it is, a DV program, where you have an opportunity to win basically a green card, be selected to win the permanent residence in the United States of America. There's a limit, there's a cap of 55,000 immigrant visas that are issued per year, and looks like we are already at 54,833. So what they're saying is it may be necessary, which sounds like it will be necessary, to take steps to avoid exceeding the country-specific numerical limits. This includes potentially canceling visa interview appointments. So if you have not reached your visa interview appointment, if you won the DV lottery, if you were selected, and you have not had your visa appointment scheduled just yet, there is a possibility that it might be canceled. Now, in those situations, if it is canceled, then it is transferred to the next fiscal year, which obviously you will have to wait some more. It doesn't mean that your visa is canceled, but it does mean that you do have to do some extra waiting, unfortunately. And a lot of times, if you have been, I do a Q&A. I try to do it every day. I haven't been doing this for the past couple of weeks because I've been moving, but whenever it comes to getting questions from immigrants like myself, you see that whenever it comes to the immigration process, it is a lot of waiting, it is a lot of patience. So unfortunately, it seems like it might be the same case for DV lottery applicants and recipients. Now, there was a cancellation of what they call the expiration of the COVID era visa application fee recipients, and it basically goes for everyone who had the MRV fees issued, and it's the machine readable visas. If it is applicable to you, then you already know what it is, and basically all of them will be expiring on September 30th, 2023. So there is a kind of a process in place where you do have to schedule an appointment or submit an interview waiver application before September 30. You don't have to have your interview before September 30, but you do need to submit either the waiver or schedule an appointment before the September 30 to avoid paying another fee, because they will be all expired. Okay, so down with the September news from the Department of State. Let's move on to the USCIS. Now, USCIS, we have some pretty good news from USCIS coming out. First of all, as of September 5th, 2 days ago, the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro N. Mayorkas, he announced that there will be an extension of the TPS status, which is a temporary protected status, for South Sudan for another 18 months from November 4, 2023. That's when the previous one was expiring, to May 3rd, 2025. So if you are from South Sudan, that's definitely good news for you. There was some tool outage on September 1st, so if you have experienced any kind of problems with the USCIS website, well, now you know why. There was an update on August 25. I know it's August, but it's the end of August, and I'll put it in this video as well, because I haven't done any updates on August. Any kind of news update on August. So there was an update for the voter registration guidance for naturalization ceremonies, and if you have have applied for, if you've submitted N400 and you're applying for naturalization, and you have already gone through your interview and you have a naturalization ceremony coming up, this is probably a really good information for you to know. And basically what it is, it sets the kind of standards for the elected officials, because elected officials, they do a lot of times participate, at least the representatives from their offices, they participate in these naturalization ceremonies. And what happens basically, it's a political recruitment. That's really what it is. They come to these naturalization ceremonies, and sometimes they participate, they award these naturalization certificates, they introduce themselves, they say, hey, we are from the office of the senator, whatever, or from the governor, or from whoever. And obviously, by doing that, they kind of make you aware of the names and who's out there. Now, the guidance is that it has to be bipartisan, so they can't be trying to drag somebody from one party to another party or something like this. So it should be a bipartisan, basically, presentation. So it's not for anyone to encourage you to be a Democrat or be a Republican or be something else, but more so encourage you to participate in election in general, participate in politics. So with that being said, I would highly recommend, if you do have your naturalization ceremony coming up, I would highly recommend, if you have not yet, if you're doing your naturalization, you have been already a permanent resident for, 3 years at least, but most likely for 5 years. And so you have been here for years now. So you are definitely familiar with the politics here in the United States. So it would help if you did not get into it just yet. I would recommend doing your research before, on your local elected officials, on your county politics in general, what it looks like, what each party represents. If you're not familiar with it, which I think you should be by now, but if you are still not, this is the perfect time to do that. Okay, so let's move on to the next news update that came out in August 24. USCIS updates policy guidance for the sought to acquire requirement under the Child Status Protection Act. And if you are not familiar with Child Status Protection Act, check out the video I have on this channel. And basically it applies for family reunification cases. And if you have children that have been under 21 when the application was filed, and now they are over 21, basically aging out, Child Status Protection Act protects some of these children that aged out in certain categories. And there is a way for you to subtract some of the time that the application was pending in order to bring that age down. And in some of the situations, it can bring that age down under 21, which honestly, yes, the way I say it, probably, if you're not familiar with family reunification, if you're not familiar with CSPA, Child Status Protection Act, it might sound kind of gibberish and all over the place. But if you are, then I would highly recommend checking out the video that I have on this channel explaining CSPA. I think that's what it's called, Understanding Child Status Protection Act. And what this policy guidance applies to. Sought to acquire, basically you applying for permanent residence on time. And if in some extraordinary situations where you did not have a chance to apply for that, sought to acquire basically that permanent residence, in some situations they might make an exception. So again, if you do have a family reunification case in process and there are children involved who are close to becoming 21 years of age, getting over that age limitation, you definitely want to check out this update policy guidance and definitely check out the video, Understanding CSPA. Okay, The very last, and I think the best of the news that I wanted to share for today is from August 21st, 2023, and is that USCIS launches online appointment request form. And it's not perfect. It was just recently launched, and I actually had a chance to test it out. And it is only for a few things. It's only for ADIT stamps, it's for emergency advance parole, and the immigration judge grant. So far, that's really a few things that they implemented this for, but I think it's really, really good. It's much needed, because before, in order to get that appointment, you had to call into the customer service line and go through a lot of prompts. I wanted to say hundreds of prompts. It's not 100 prompts, but at least probably 10 prompts that you have to go through and sit there and listen to the information before you can actually talk to the live person, before even getting anywhere close to scheduling that appointment. So now that they are implementing this, I really hope it's a matter of time where they actually will be something like InfoPass, like it used to be back in the day, probably like 10 years ago, where you could just go schedule your online appointment, go to the field office, bring all the documents, sit down in front of the actual person and ask your questions. You know, it's so invaluable just being able to talk to someone when you have questions, when you're stressed out, when you don't know what you're doing. And going through immigration process, a lot of times that's how it feels. You know, a lot of times you are like, man, what am I doing? Well, where do I go from here? Having the ability to go and sit down with the actual person and having a conversation with them who represents USCIS, not just some third party, not somebody, you know, an attorney, because you can always do that. For a fee, you can always do that. And sometimes, you know, you can find a free consultation and you can do that. But talking directly to the USCIS representatives is, you know, it's completely different. So with this, yes, you cannot do a lot with this yet, but it is a start, and hopefully it just you know, grows from here on, and we will see how this develops. So that's really it for the news for today. Let me know if you have any questions. You can ask them in the comments below. And like I said, I do Q&A videos on this channel. I try to do it every day. I have been out for the past couple of weeks because I was moving, but hopefully I will be getting back to the normal scheduling of making these videos every day. So just post your question. Don't share your personal information, obviously. Just, you know, hide the personal information, you know, skip the names, skip the numbers, give me the dates if you have the priority date, if it's a family reunification case, and I will be addressing it in the future volumes of me answering your immigration related questions. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. God bless, and I'll see you all in the next video.